Boldwood presents Love is a Four-Letter Word, written by Claire Calman and read by Charlotte Strevens. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Prologue. She sees herself fall in slow motion, the toe of her shoe catching on the edge of the paving stone, her arm reaching out in front of her, her hand a pale shape like a leaf against a dark sky. The pavement swims towards her. It cracks the streets of a city seen from a skyscraper, the texture of the concrete slab suddenly sharply in focus. It is not a bad fall. A swelling on her left knee, destined to become an outsized bramble-stained bruise, a stinging graze on the heel of her hand, a buggered pair of decent tights. Back at home, Bella balances half a bag of frozen broad beans on the knee and sips at a glass of Shiraz. She tells herself it is not a bad fall. But when she wakes the next morning, it is as if a switch has been thrown, draining off all her energy in the night. She leans against the kitchen worktop to drink her coffee, not daring to sit down, because she knows she will never get up again. Overnight, London seems to have become a grotesque parody of a metropolis, no longer bustling and stimulating, but loud and abrasive. Litter flies up from the gutters. Grit pricks her eyes. She feels fragile, a rabbit caught in the target beam of headlights. Buses loom out of nowhere, bearing down on her. Cyclists swerve to avoid her, bellowing abuse. She tenses each muscle in her body when she crosses the road, imagines she can hear the thud-thudding of her heart. When someone bumps into her in the street, she thinks she will splinter into tiny fragments. In her mind, she sees her body shatter, and the pieces shower through the air like the explosion of a firework, tinkling like glass as each one strikes the pavement. She imagines them coming to sweep her up, so they could painstakingly reassemble her, but shards of her are left behind, unnoticed in the gutter, hidden by a litter bin or a lamp-post. Her doctor is unsympathetic, sighing through his nostrils as she answers his questions. Months of overworking, he says. Prolonged stress. What else did she expect? Did she want to have a serious collapse? If so, she was certainly going the right way about it. No tablets, he says. No prescription. Time off. Rest. Rethink your life. That's it? She asks. That's it. Her boss is unsurprised. You no use to me half dead, he says. Sod off to the Caribbean for a month. Drink Mai Tais till dawn and shag some waiters. The Caribbean. She is so exhausted she'd be lucky to make it down the road to the travel agent. Perhaps they could administer her Mai Tais via a drip. Visiting her good friends, Viv and Nick, in the Kentish city where they now live, she wanders at convalescent pace through the web of narrow streets, past lopsided houses and ancient flint walls. She focuses on one task at a time, as if she were a stroke victim, learning afresh each skill she had previously taken for granted. Then, meandering down a quiet side street near the river, she sees the for sale board. Compared with the London flat she had rented with Patrick, number 31 is a delight. Sunny, spacious, with a proper garden rather than a sad, overshadowed strip of concrete. Yes, says Viv, a fresh start is just what Bella needs. Plenty of companies would jump at the chance to have someone with her experience. She seems to enter a trance then, dealing with the solicitor, the building society, writing job applications. Forms, paperwork become a welcome distraction, tangible things to focus on, things she can solve. You take a pen, fill in the spaces in neat block capitals. The questions are straightforward: name, address, bank details, current salary. You do it all properly, and you get the results you were aiming for. It feels like magic. She moves smoothly through the weeks on automatic pilot, gliding through her notice period at work, her smile efficiently in place, her projects on schedule. Now that she knows she's leaving, she cuts down on her hours and fills her evening with paperwork and planning, even relishing each hitch and setback. the vendor's pedantry about the garden shed, the surveyor's discovery of damp as something she can get her teeth into. In her neat ring binder, sectioned with coloured card dividers, she can find any particular piece of paper in an instant. The rings click closed with a satisfying clunk, containing her, keeping her life in order. She transfers her accounts, her doctor, her dentist, sends out exquisitely designed change of address cards. This is easy. Making phone calls, folding A4 letters into 3 and sliding them into envelopes, measuring for curtains. And it fills her head. She needs it to hold her, as if each stage of buying the house is a sharp staple grasping together the sections of an ancient cracked plate. Chapter 1. Now that she was here, this didn't seem like quite such a brilliant idea. Around her, on all sides, stretched a cubist landscape of cardboard boxes. The removal men had thoughtfully set them down in such ways as to make traversing the room an epic expedition, necessitating the use of ropes, crampons, and teams of huskies. And the heating had decided not to work. Of course. No doubt the vendor had extracted some vital organ from the boiler the moment they had exchanged contracts. He had taken the art of pettiness to new heights, or was it depths, arguing over every fitting and fixture, frequently phoning Bella, his manner swinging between smarmy and covertly aggressive. He was sure she would like to buy his wrought iron wall lights. They were practically new. No, she said, she wouldn't. The built-in shelves? She had assumed they were, well, built in. What about the curtain tracks? The stair carpet? It still had plenty of wear in it, he insisted, hanging on in there like a dog unwilling to relinquish a bone. She agreed, non-committally, deciding its durability was a disadvantage, unless you wanted to design your decor around a theme of khaki ripple. He was obviously attached to it, she pointed out. Clearly he must take it with him. Now, sitting on the stairs, trying not to catch her jeans on the exposed gripper strip, she stretched out one foot to flip open the lid of the nearest box. Loo brush, bubble-wrapped mirror, squeaky rubber crocodile. Oh. She checked the label on the side. BTH. Marvellous. That was supposed to be upstairs, in the BTH. How much clearer could she have made it? Evidently, she should have written box for bathroom. That means upstairs, the room with the bath in it. Something else to add to the list. Lugging downstairs boxes upstairs, and upstairs boxes downstairs. Her gaze fell on the puckered and peeling paintwork above the skirting board. The only house in the street with psoriasis. The damp, that ought to be top of the list. Certainly above getting the sash cords fixed, or redecorating the bathroom, or polyfilling the crack in the study, or painting a mural on the end wall of the garden, or, in her mind, the list stretched out before her, a rippling paper path, unrolling itself to infinity. There was a banging on the front door. "Why didn't you use the bell, you old bag?" "I did. It obviously doesn't work, slagface." Viv gave Bella a hug and pushed a gold cardboard box into her hands. "Just what I need. A cardboard box. I was running dangerously low on them. How on earth did you guess?" "It's cakes, emergency rations." "My God, are all the rooms as full as this?" Viv waggled her head in disbelief, sending her precariously pinned carroty hair lurching from side to side. "I seem to have more stuff than I thought," Bella shrugged. "What's in them all?" "I don't know. Books, paints, kitchen things, families of refugees, you know, stuff." Viv opened a nearby box. "Old exhibition catalogues?" "I've been meaning to go through them and weed the ones out I don't want, but I haven't got round to it yet." "Is that the Kreutzer family motto? Dulce et decorum est procrastinati?" "Thank you for those few charming words. Make yourself useful, can't you? Help me look for the kettle. It's in a box marked KTCH, which stands for kitchen, not kitsch, before you make any smart-ass comments. It's probably up in the BTH. That first night in her new home, Bella left a light on as she always did. She'd had to dash out to the late-night corner shop to buy light bulbs, because the vendor had removed every single one of them. She lay awake, looking at the slit of light under the bedroom door. I ought to be feeling excited, she told herself. New house, new job, new city? I mustn't be so negative. So what if I've only got 1 week to sort out the house before I start at Scott and Design? So the house needs a few things seeing to. That's why it was so reasonable, a counter-voice cut in. Are you completely clueless? As if you didn't have enough on your plate without turning your entire life upside down. Now you'll be living in mouldy chaos forever. And you don't even know anyone here except for Viv and Nick. And you can't expect to see them all the time. They've got each other. They don't need you. As her eyelids drooped, she thought of Patrick. If he'd been with her now, what would he be doing? Snoring, probably, she reminded herself sharply. He'd have liked the house, she decided, yawning and snuggling down under the duvet. That was the bugger about not having a chap around the place. He would have got the damp sorted. And the boxes. No, she thought. He wouldn't. Patrick would have stepped over the boxes, saying, "We really must sort these out." But at least he would have rubbed her cold feet to warm them up. Bella bit her lip. Enough with the self-pity, okay? She considered the plus points. Lovely house of her very own, with loads of potential, especially now Mr. Petty had stripped it of his beloved wall lights and nauseating carpets. Near Viv, so her phone bill wouldn't plummet, because they wouldn't have to have their epic long-distance calls any more. No longer having to hold her breath every time her colleague Val, known as valitosis, came within exhalation range. Interesting new job that should be less stressful. Yes, she comforted herself, less stress, that was the main thing. No more having her face stuffed into someone else's armpit on the tube. No more spending a fortune on taxis to get home safely late at night. No more dingy flat where she had to have the lights on, even in the daytime. No more thoughts of Patrick confronting her every time she opened the front door to a flat full of silence. She made herself do her Pollyanna voice. Golly gosh! Wasn't she just the luckiest girl in the whole wide world? A fresh start! Gee, it sure was exciting. She could hardly wait. Chapter 2. Right. Pens, briefcase, shoes polished, lipstick, hair. Oh, bollocks. It wasn't supposed to do that. It made her look like a sheepdog that had been lolloping through the undergrowth. She stuck out her tongue and panted to complete the effect. Perhaps her hair would be better pinned up. She scooped it up off her neck and made what she hoped was an elegant face in the mirror. Tremendous. Now she resembled a coiffured poodle. She had a hat somewhere. Out there, in the box zone, there was definitely a fetching little item of headgear. The question was, which box? She kicked the nearest one, as if it might make a hat-containing type noise. A look at her watch. Now was not the time to start hunting for hats. And what would she do with it anyway? She could hardly keep it on all day. Perhaps she could claim to be Muslim, or having chemotherapy. She stood at the kitchen sink and drank a glass of water to settle her stomach. Good grief! This was worse than going on a date, or preparing for her first day at school. You're 33, for God's sake, she told herself. They're not going to pick on you or try to nick your pencil case. Mummy stands talking to Mr. Bounds, the headmaster. She lays a hand on his arm and tilts her head back as she laughs. Bella looks down at her own feet, at her new shoes. They are navy blue, with shiny silver buckles and straps that are still too stiff to do up herself. It is September, but she is wearing pristine white ankle socks with neat blue anchors around the cuffs. The other girls, she sees, have knee-length grey socks, autumn socks. Through her new blue felt hat, she feels a pat on her head. She looks up. So nice to see a pupil properly dressed with the correct school hat, says Mr. Bounds, leaning towards Mummy. So few parents bother now. He laughs as if he is making a joke, but Bella supposes it must be a grown-up joke, because she does not know what is funny. "But it is so charming, I think, no?" Mummy does that thing with her voice, almost as if she's going to start singing, and taps the brim of Bella's hat with one long finger. Standing still in her hat, Bella imagines she is a navy blue mushroom. She wishes she were in the woods, her feet sunk in velvet moss, her toenails growing, stretching, becoming roots in the earth. Rabbits would stop and talk to her and tickle her with their noses. She would listen to the leaves as they rustled in the wind. Mr. Bounds waves bye-bye to her mother, then deposits Bella with an older girl who shepherds her into the correct classroom. She is the only one wearing a hat. It took her longer to find Scotland design than she had expected. This was probably because she was coming at it from the other way round, she decided. Still, there seemed to be a brigadoon-like quality to the place. Surely it'd be down that turning, just past the shoe shop. Hang on a tick. Last time she'd come from the station, so that meant she should have turned left back there, not right. Or did it? She stood still for a moment, trying to ignore the flutter of panic rising in her stomach. A passer-by sighed loudly as he detoured around her, impatient at yet another gawping tourist blocking the pavement. The tower of the cathedral loomed large to her left. Aha! Cathedral on left, so, yes, past greasy chip shop and Waterstones. Renewing old London habits, she veered automatically into a cafe as she neared the office to pick up a cappuccino and a Danish. Excess froth splurged out of the steam hole in the lid, sidling lava-like towards her fingers. She was still licking her fingers as she entered the reception area to be greeted by her new boss. "Bella, you're here! Great!" Celine checked her watch. "New client meeting at 2, but I'm out most of the morning, so I'll have to brief you in 2 minutes, okay?" "Fine." Bella lifted her voice, attempting to interject exclamation marks to match Celine's tone. Had she really been like this at her 2 interviews? Of course! She looked around for somewhere to set down her cascading coffee. Tomorrow, she'd be sure to get herself a quadruple espresso, so she could boost her energy levels and not sound like the Dormouse from Alice in Wonderland by comparison. "Gail, do the honours, will you?" "Here, let me take those." Gail disentangled Bella from her cup, her coat, her briefcase. "Pay no attention to Celine. She's just trying to impress, 'cause you're swanky art director from big city. There's the loo, by the way. Kitchen, coffee maker, tea bags in there. Now come and meet the other inmates." "Should we go to the tapas place again?" said Viv on the phone the next day. "But I always go there. Is it too pathetic?" "Why spend ages traipsing around town hunting for somewhere new, just to prove you're an exciting, adventurous person who doesn't always go to the same 2 restaurants, when you already know that you aren't adventurous, and they are clearly the 2 best places to go? Count yourself lucky you've not got much choice. Neither have you. You live here too now, remember?" "Yes, but I've retained some semblance of urban sophistication, whereas you probably think focaccia is a Romanian folk dance." For now, at least, Bella genuinely preferred this provincial paucity of choice. In London, she'd felt like a hero from Greek legend faced with an impossible dilemma. Patrick used to narrow it down in stages, first by continent, then country. Right, Europe, Italian, French, Greek? Then to the quest for the elusive holy trinity of decent food, friendly service and good atmosphere, juggling combinations until it was almost too late to be worth going. "The Conca d'Oro has that nice waitress, but the veg was soggy last time. Le Beaujolais? Good chips, but can you handle the look of condescending superiority when you ask for vinegar?" Sorry. Viv swept into the tapas bar 20 minutes late. "There was a complete crisis at work. The entire network crashed because some total arsehole plugged in a hairdryer and overloaded the electrics." Viv loved a good crisis. They ordered a couple of beers and debated over whether the pinchos morunos or the pollo al ajillo was a better bet. "What do you think?" Viv indicated the waiter with her eyebrows. "Bit tasty?" Bella wrinkled her nose. You're so fussy. I thought you liked Latin men. He's probably from Bromley, Bella said. I know. I'll never get anyone at this rate. You sound just like my mother. Did I say that? Of course you'll find someone else. No need to panic, not for ages and ages. What's that? Bella cocked her head as if listening for something. What? Tick, tick. My biological clock. Surely you can hear it. My mother can hear it over 50 miles away, apparently. I don't care. I've decided not to worry about having sprogs. I'm just going to get some on timeshare for 2 weeks a year. How are the parents, anyway? Viv said, speaking through the lime wedge that she had decorked from her beer bottle and clamped between her lips like a comic mouth. Have they been to view the new Kreutzer estate yet? Fending them off as long as possible. Alessandra asked after you, as always, last time we spoke. Bella coloured her voice with theatrical timbre as she said her mother's name. I can just see her peering at the damp. Oh, is that a deliberate paint effect, Bella, darling? What you need, said Viv, is an action plan. To meet men. I never turn down invitations, no matter how dull they sound. Thanks, said Viv. That's the last time I ask you out. Not you, stupid. Bella took a swig of her beer straight from the bottle. I told you I'm not bothered. I like being on my own. Liar. Pig, I do. Why shouldn't I? Just because you've found Mr. Perfect, you think anyone single must be some pathetic half-person. Viv shook her head. Even Nick's mum would hardly describe him as perfect. What about the new job? What's the official rating? A vestige from when they used to hunt in a pack. The other two, Kath and Sinead, had long since defected by committing the cardinal sin, getting married. And since Viv had been living with Nick, Bella was the sole remaining singleton. 0.5, 2 married, 1 gay, and 1 too wet to risk leaving in the same room as a packet of crackers. Not even a whiff of a man lately? Can't even remember what one looks like. They're the ones with the stubble and the big egos, right? I went out a couple of times with that account exec. From the ad agency, Tim, remember? But he was deathly. Whittled on about his shares portfolio and what I should be buying and selling. Ugh. I'm better off without. I hate all that coupley stuff anyway. Which stuff? You know, all that having joint opinions about everything. We think this and we do that. We consider Citizen Kane to be overrated and we prefer Sichuan cuisine to Cantonese. Their personalities go all amoeba'd into one, like a matching pen and pencil set. That's such crap. We're not like that. See? We're not. Whatever happened to I? Anyway, Viv sighed and signalled to the waiter for another 2 beers. There's lots of good bits. Love. Companionship. Sex, for a start. Sex? What's that? Is that the thing that happens somewhere between the first snog and the slamming of the front door? Oh, yes. I had some of that once. So, have you not? Viv nodded, euphemistically. Since? No. No one since Patrick. I have been designated a shag-free zone. It's official. No one since Patrick. She could remember the last time. It was Christmas, Boxing Day. They just got back to the flat after a slow and drizzly drive home from visiting his parents in Norfolk. The flat is cold and unwelcoming, the fridge pathetically un-Christmassy. Bare, except for a half-used tube of tomato puree, a sad lemon, and 2 bottles of wine. I think I'll slope off to bed, she says, half suppressing a yawn. So tired. Good idea. I'll come too. She undresses slowly, pulling off her things distractedly, tugging her still-buttoned cuffs over her hands because she can't be bothered to undo them, reaches for her big black T-shirt under her pillow, her fluffy bed socks, pads through to the bathroom to brush her teeth. You reading tonight? Asks Patrick. Her Christmas books are still in a carrier bag in the hall. She shakes her head. A click as he switches off the light. She feels his hand snake over her side, under her T-shirt, cupping her tummy from behind. You're nice and warm." She turns over to kiss him good-night. "Night," she says. She feels his tongue pushed tentatively between her lips. Starts to murmur that she's really too sleepy. It's been a long day. He strokes her hair. Speaks softly, telling her he loves her, how soft her skin feels, how sexy she is. Her body starts to respond automatically to his touch, his hand moving between her thighs. She feels herself growing wet, hears his low sigh as his fingers find her. Boxing Day. The year before, the one just gone, she remembered. That's when it was. Now he's rather nice. Over there, don't look. Viv's voice shifted to a stage whisper. Fine, I'm not looking. No, look now, quick. Bella craned her head round to see the unwitting quarry, pretending to be looking at the Spanish poster advertising a bullfight on the wall above. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Viv, he's with someone. See that other person at the same table with the earrings and the polka dot blouse? She didn't come as a side order with the meal, you know. Here's some bread and a woman for the evening. Viv waved her away dismissively. She could be his cousin, come for a visit. She could be the Dalai Lama in disguise. But let's look at the most likely option first, shall we? 2 people, 1 male, 1 female, in a restaurant in the evening. Sounds suspiciously like a couple having a relationship to me. You ought to know. That's what normal people do. I read it in one of the Sunday supplements. They walked as far as the cathedral together before their routes took them separate ways. How stunning it was lit up at night, and not a tourist in sight to appreciate it. By day, it was a magnet for Japanese groups following their tour guide, bearing a rolled umbrella aloft like a drum majorette, and troops of French school children sporting identical blue caps and matching plastic pouches round their necks, advertising, "My passport and all my money, steal me." Bella walked across the bridge. The river glinted darkly below. A few boats bobbed gently, clunking woodenly against each other. It looked mysterious and exciting, the kind of night when your partner might turn to you and say, "Let's go to Rome for the weekend, now." Did anyone really have a relationship like that? Viv frequently complained that she and Nick never managed to get away. And even when Bella had been with someone, they had never done spontaneous things like jetting off to the continent on the spur of the moment or having sex on the kitchen floor or in the bath. Once, in a fit of horniness, she and Sean, her boyfriend before Patrick, had tugged down each other's jeans and attempted to do it on the stairs. But the jeans were in the way, and there seemed to be far too many knees involved in the proceedings, and after 2 minutes the step digging into her lower back was all she could think about. They'd had to stop and trip upstairs to his bedroom, their legs pinioned by their half-mast jeans, by which time much of their fiery passion had fizzled into a damp squib. It was just one of those pointless ideas they used to fill up the pages of women's magazines. Love life lost its magic? Spice it up. Initiate sex at unexpected moments and in surprising places. But they were always special magazine world clichés about romance and sex. Stuff like, tuck little love notes into your partner's pockets for him to discover during the day, and surprise your man by whispering to him that you're not wearing any panties when you're out together. He'd just think you were going prematurely senile. What if you told him while you were tootling around Tesco's hunting for decent olives? That would certainly be a surprise. Would he really be so overcome with excitement that he'd lean you back over the long-life milk, or take you over a freezer filled with coffee viennettas and Arctic rolls? Wouldn't that be awfully cold on your bottom? Would other shoppers ignore you? How English. And perhaps try to reach past your thigh, saying, "Excuse me, dear, could I just get to the Mandarin cheesecake? See, I've my sister-in-law coming at the weekend." A young couple wove towards her, stopping every few feet to kiss, veering erratically in their path like drunken crabs. An older pair, in their 50s she guessed, passed by holding hands. When she was first with Patrick, she had usually felt glad at the sight of other couples laughing and kissing and canoodling. There seemed to be a secret bond between them all. Sometimes 4 pairs of eyes would meet and smile. We know how good life is, don't we? Now it just made Bella depressed. God, How smug couples were. If she were ever stupid enough to be in a couple again, that sounded dreadful. In a couple, like in prison, in detention, in a mess. She would shun smugness. How can you be so ungenerous about other people's happiness? She reproached herself. She lengthened her stride and resolved to be more positive. Things were fine. Time for herself, so she could concentrate on her house. She could slump about all weekend in slobby clothes. Go out with lots of different men. No need to keep tidying the towels because he couldn't grasp the concept of folding. No need to buy that ridiculous expensive 3-fruit marmalade just because he liked it. But I grew to like that marmalade too, she reminded herself. And I don't seem to be going out with lots of men, do I? That was true, she admitted. But she could if she wanted to. It was the principle that mattered. Lying in bed that night, Bella thought about Viv and Nick. Strange how seamlessly Viv had gone from being Viv to being Viv and Nick, as if he'd always been there. He was unmistakably a fixture, built into Viv's life, and Viv to his. Wouldn't be Bella's choice, of course. Hare had evidently been on strict rations when Nick reached the head of the queue. He had soft, malleable features that looked as if you could squish them out of position, and they might stay that way, like plasticine. And his devotion to his car, a pale blue Calman gear, was a bit sad, especially since it was over-fond of the hard shoulder, tending to break down on any journey over 20 miles. Still, he and Viv obviously loved each other to pieces. She could certainly think of worse matches, her own parents for a start. Her father, so mild, so eager to please. Her mother... Well, at least she wasn't like her. Perhaps Viv was at that same moment thinking about Bella. Was she lying there in bed, snuggled up to Nick, saying to him, "Poor Bella seems to have thrown in the towel. No sex for more than a year. Probably never find anyone half as nice as Patrick again. Still, should be over him by now." Bella could hear it cycling round and round in her head. Should be over him by now. Should be over him by now. Chapter 3. Beneath the 2 words, yoghurt, ideas, on her notepad, a sketch of Bella's new boss was taking shape nicely. The gap between her neck and her shirt collar, the glasses propped on top of her head, apparently watching the ceiling. As if it were a thing apart, Bella watched the line of her pencil recreate the angle where Celine's chin jutted forward in eagerness, a chicken heading for corn. "Bella?" Celine raised her eyebrows at her. Bella clunked her coffee mug down on top of the sketch and tried to look thoughtful, as if weighing up all the various options before giving her opinion. Could they possibly still be talking about the yoghurt campaign, or had they moved on to the corporate design deal for the country house hotel? She felt like a school kid, about to be told off for not paying attention. "Bella Kreutzer, are you daydreaming again?" She volunteered, trying to peer sideways at Anthony's pad to read the note he was scribbling for her. "Lifestyle yoghurt," Celine prompted. "Any more thought on the redesign? The focus group's research suggests it looks too healthy. The client wants a new look." "Yes, I've been thinking." Bella nodded wisely, every inch the creative director, keen to consider yoghurt carton design very seriously indeed. "I certainly think we could strengthen the idea that these yoghurts are fun and sensual, too. The consumer, wants to feel that she can be healthy yet self-indulgent and just a bit sinful at the same time. I'll do some roughs tomorrow with a sexier typeface." "Great!" Celine clicked her pen against her teeth, pleased. "Anyone else?" The inside of Bella's lower lip was sore where she had been biting it. She'd only been in the job for a fortnight, and already she was finding it hard to keep a straight face. It was as bad as when she'd been in advertising or women's magazines. How was she supposed to maintain a sensible, grown-up expression when people started talking about yoghurt, or detergent, or a new paint range as if it were a cure for cancer, or a way to bring about world peace? Celine, who ran Scotland Design, or Scrotum Design as Anthony liked to call it, was in many respects a perfectly sane human being and, as she frequently claimed, as fond of a joke as the next person, which would be true if the next person were also a stranger to the concept of irony. But she often acted as if the sky would fall in if the lettering on a packet of panty liners didn't convey dryness, freshness, a carefree attitude, a healthy sex life, and a busy, affluent lifestyle. And that was just the lettering. Who needed panty liners anyway? That's what knickers were for. Soon they'd be marketing liners to keep your panty liners fresh and dry. Bella told herself she shouldn't knock it. On a good day, she prided herself on her ability to know exactly which typeface looked more carefree than any other. Besides, it kept her off the streets, and someone had to pay for all that damp treatment, and the extractor fan, and replacing those 2 sash cords, and the buggery doorbell, and she could do with the freezer, too. On cue, the list of things to be done appeared in her head, winding itself around her, binding her like an Egyptian mummy. She closed her eyes at the thought and comforted herself with the knowledge that she could go and see Viv soon, if she could escape without Celine heading her off at the pass. "Bella, what a surprise!" Nick came into the kitchen and started filling the kettle. "It seems like only yesterday that we saw you." "Ah, it was yesterday. So, how have you been in the last 24 hours? I'm going. It's her fault. She made me come." Bella pointed at Viv. "I did. It was me." Viv held Nick around his waist. "But she's doing it for you. She's showing me how to make her posh fish pie, so I can do it for your parents at the weekend. Correction, I am, in fact, making the fish pie for the freezer, while Viv stands there and nods and says, 'Oh, I think I see. Show me how to peel just one more potato, and then I'll have a go.' Cup of tea, anyone? No? You found the wine, then?" Nick topped up their glasses. "Then you take the olives." Nick's hand shot out and grabbed one. "And you give them to Nick because Dad doesn't like them. And lay them on one side to pass to Nick." Nick went and stretched out on the sofa. "I'm out of earshot now if you two want to talk about men and sex and girly stuff." "Shoes, Nick," called Viv from the kitchen. There was a discreet rustling, as of the sound of a newspaper being tucked under feet. "Nick, imagine you're a proper man for a minute." "Cheers, Bella." "Oh, shush. You know what I mean. Viv says I should ask you how to attract a bloke." "Since when did you start taking Viv's advice? I didn't think you wanted one." "That's just what I said. Viv doesn't believe me. I wouldn't mind some sex, though, before I forget how to do it." Viv joined in. "Come on, she's lovely. She should have queues of chaps banging on her door." "No. People always say they want your honest advice, and then they get pissed off with you." "I promise not to, Nick. Scout's honour." Bella held up her hand in a 3-fingered salute. "When were you ever a scout?" hissed Viv. Bella waved her away. He shook his head and kept on reading a magazine while he nibbled gerbil-like on a mint matchmaker. Viv made little kissing noises at him. Bella joined in on the other side. Nick sighed. "At your own risk, then. Of course, it's only my opinion, and I realise I'm not a proper man or anything, but if you really just want a fling, then get your legs out, woman. Wear a short skirt and laugh at our jokes. That should do it." "Is that the best you can do?" Viv flicked his magazine. "What? What? I've read this bloody sentence 12 times now. Kindly bugger off." He rested his magazine over his face. "Nick, we promised to bugger off in a minute." Bella slowly lifted one corner of his magazine tent and peered underneath. "And we'll make you a coffee, and be sure to laugh at your jokes when you make one. But do I, look all right?" "Geez, what are you like? As I said, skirts are good. Aside from that..." Nick started counting off on his fingers. 1, you wear too many dark things. It's depressing. 2, do something about your hair. It's great, but half the time no one can see your face, which seems to be a bit of a waste. Can't you pin it back or up or something? 3, you want to burn that terrible jacket. Don't you own anything else? It's miles too big. You look like you're hoping no one will notice you." "Nick," Viv warned. "What? What? What have I done now?" "Nothing. It's fine. Bella reached across him for a matchmaker. It's Patrick's. Oh, sorry. It's no biggie. Carry on. Plus, you could try smiling from time to time. Men like that. It makes us feel wanted. Like this? Bella adopted an enormous toothy grin and skipped energetically around the room. Isn't life fab? Pollyanna was a chronic depressive compared to me. So I suppose it wouldn't be a waste to cover my face with hair then, said Viv. I knew this would happen. I hate both of you. Nick heaved himself up from the sofa. If anyone wants me, I'll be pretending to be a proper man, reading my car magazine in the bog. There were 2 messages on her answer phone when she got home. One from the damp man, saying he couldn't do the damp until the weather was better. Perhaps he was hoping that every extra day of rain would make it worse, and he'd be able to hack off another foot of plaster and whack up the bill. And one from her father, Gerald. Just calling to say hello. See how it's all going. Well, I dare say you're managing fine. Give us a ring sometime. Lots of love, Dads. He always finished like that on the answer phone, as if he were writing a letter. She wasn't in the mood to speak to anyone. There was nothing on TV, and, having lugged her folio with her notes and sketches in back home, she didn't feel inspired by the prospect of trying to make yoghurt sexy. So she ran herself a deep bath with lavender oil instead. Her candles were reduced to sad stubs, having dripped down their twiddly fake verdigris holders into a Gothic encrustation. And there were spatters of wax on the tiles at one end of the bath. She sat on the edge of the bath while the water was running in, idly picking off bits of wax and flicking them into the loo, then spent 15 minutes looking in boxes for more candles. She ran her fingers through her hair as if she were posing for a shampoo ad, until her fingers got tangled. Then she wafted slowly around the room, hunting for a hair clip. I'm too sensitive to expose myself to the glare of artificial light, she said out loud. Where are the rose petals for my bath water? My trained eunuchs to paint my toenails and squeeze my spots. The candle-lit bathing had started with Patrick, but then it was the sort of thing you fell into quite legitimately when you were a couple, along with soaping each other's backs, mounding soap suds into exaggerated body parts, and volunteering to have the end with the taps. Right on cue, the image of Patrick as she had last seen him appeared in her mind. She grabbed her loofah mitt and started scrubbing over vigorously at her skin. Was this really supposed to have an effect on cellulite, or did it just make you red and sore, so that the cellulite was less noticeable? She peered at her thighs in the flickering light. As well as it making it hard to see her cellulite, reason enough, surely, the candles were, in fact, highly functional. Once activated by turning on the light, the extractor fan would continue its deranged mosquito whine for almost an hour, even after the light had been turned off. Bella planned to get it fixed at some point. Any day now, almost certainly, once the damp had been done, but the list had reached such epic proportions that she felt unequal to the task of tackling even a single item on it, so for now she left the door open and the landing light on when she went to the loo, and she had baths by candlelight. She lay in the bath, lapped by the clean scent of lavender and the flicker of the candles. The events of the day whizzed around her mind, prosaic yet insistent. Was Celine annoyed with her? She should have asked Anthony about next week's presentation. How long would the damp treatment take, and how messy would it be? She might even have to move out for a few days. If only someone else would come along and solve everything. Bella sank lower in the bath, soaked her flannel and draped it over her face. She closed her eyes and imagined she could see herself from above, wondering what it would be like to float up from her body, feel her mind, her thoughts detaching themselves, pulling at her flesh as they dragged away like a sticking plaster. Rain pattered hard against the window, fingers tapping a tattoo against the glass. She willed herself to hear his tread, the twisting of the doorknob. Behind her closed eyelids, she could see the candles in her mind, their flames sending skittering shadows on the walls, dancing patterns of light over her glistening thighs, her breasts. The door swings open and he looks at her questioningly. She smiles her assent and he comes towards her and kneels down next to the bath. His flop of hair falls forward and he runs his hand through it to push it back. Silence. He does not need to speak, but his eyes gleam with longing. At first he just looks at her, his gaze tracing her shape. Then he pushes back his sleeves and reaches down to her. Downstairs, the phone rang and her answer phone clicked in. "Hello? Dad again. Do you fancy coming for a visit at the weekend? Be lovely to see you. Mum says you're welcome to bring anyone, you know, if you want to. If there's someone. Well, or just your good self, of course. More than enough. Lots of love. Oh, and we've still got your housewarming present." Bella rolled her eyes at an invisible audience. Still, she hadn't visited the House of Fun for quite a while. She couldn't fend it off forever. The water was getting too cold, hovering at the same temperature as her skin, so that she was hardly aware of it as water around her. Another minute or two, and it would start to feel cool. She'd have to top up or get out. Out, Bella decided, or she'd look as alluring as a pickled walnut. It wasn't too late to ring Dad back. Perhaps she would go. It might be fine. She could do with a change of scene anyway. Have a walk with Dad and the dog. A break from staring at the still-packed boxes. She shivered and shook herself, automatically tapping each foot against the side to shed excess water, a relic from childhood baths and protecting the carpet. "Do try not to drip absolutely everywhere, Bella, darling. If it gets wet, it'll start to shrink." Chapter 4. Every time we say goodbye, I die a little. Bella sang along with Ella Fitzgerald while sucking on a sherbet lemon, cursed at a driver surging onto the roundabout in front of her. Why a little? Why the gods above me? She should have left at lunchtime to miss the Friday exodus. Since Bella had moved, it was barely more than a 50-mile journey to her parents' place, a wisteria-covered house in a pretty village in Sussex. But it was turning out to be a slow drive, much of it cross-country on minor roads. If only she hadn't got stuck on the receiving end of one of Celine's interminable monologues about the various ailments of her cats. In the end, she had backed out of the door, shaking her head in sympathy. How awful! Falling out in handfuls! Crusty scabs, poor thing! They were always suffering from some disgusting condition, which would be related to everyone in the office, one at a time, so that all through the day she could overhear the same fragments. "Ooh! Suppositories! Really?" As if played on a continuous tape loop. Why on earth didn't Celine just shoot them and get some new unscabby ones? She peered at the signs. Second, third exit, that's the one. Think so little of me. They allow you to go. It was properly dark now, and the red tail-lights of the car in front bored hypnotically into her eyes against the deepening blue-black of the road and sky. Night driving seemed so full of promise, the road stretching out before her as if it could take her anywhere she wanted to go, her path plotted by a trail of lights, like an unnamed constellation crossing the sky. Suddenly, the sign she had just passed filtered through to her consciousness. Her turn-off was coming up. A259 Rye, Hastings. She abandoned her attempt to overtake a Fiat that was even older than her red Peugeot and nudged back into place to be ready for the turning. A reproving flash from the car behind. Concentrate, woman. If only she didn't feel so tired all the time. There was an old truck stop a couple of miles along this road, she seemed to recall, a relic of an era of bikers in black leather who roared their engines to impress girls in zip-up boots and miniskirts. By some miracle, it had not yet been closed down or transformed into an unhappy eater, or loathsome chef with smooth plastic seats, smooth plastic fried eggs, and unsmooth, authentic bad service, heralded by badges proclaiming, "Hi, I'm Nikki, it's my pleasure to serve you," Their enthusiasm as convincing as a squeezed, lemon-faced aunt in a purple party hat. Why didn't they just tell it like it is? Yeah, I'm Charmaine. I'll bring it when I can be bothered. Bright lights, the sound of eggs spluttering into hot oil, the smell of all-day breakfasts. The few men at the tables looked up from their papers or their mugs of tea when Bella entered. She wished she'd stopped long enough to change out of her work clothes. The clacking of her heels seemed grotesquely amplified by the lino floor as she crossed to the counter to order, drumming out a message in Morse, "Look at me, look at me." She buttoned up her tailored jacket to compensate for her new skirt. The crisp horizontal of its hem framed her exposed knees. She fought the urge to tug it down. "Pay when you're done, love," the waitress behind the counter said. "Here, hang on a tick for your tea. I'm just making fresh. I'll bring your sandwich over in a minute." She emptied the teapot, spooned in some fresh tea. Steam billowed around her hands, clouding the shine of the metal teapot, the gold of her wedding band, as water rushed from the urn. "All right, Jim." She turned to a chunkily attractive man who had come up to pay. "Where are you off to this time, gorgeous?" "Only Southampton. Better give me a roll for the road, though, eh?" "Give you a roll any time, Jim." Now, lady present. Take no notice," he said, turning to Bella. He had on a white T-shirt underneath his soft cotton checked shirt, the way American men often wear them. She could see the tendons flex in his tanned neck. He pushed back his sleeve to the elbow, absently rubbing at the dark hairs on his forearm. "All right?" He nodded, smiling. Bella looked down, suddenly aware that her gaze had lingered on him too long. Her eyes dropped to his hands. The nails were cut close, the fingers full of easy strength. "Fine. Thanks." "You sure now? Need a ride or anything? You look a bit lost." "No, really." Bella snapped him a poised but distant smile. "I have my car." She folded her arms in front of her, then felt silly to be so pointedly defensive. "Thank you." "No bother." He stepped back a pace, then smiled and raised his hand. "Sorry, I'll keep my distance," before turning again to the waitress at the till. The bacon was thick and salty between chunky slices of hot buttered toast. Bella tore into her sandwich and slurped her tea in an "I'm all right, Jack" independent sort of way. Lady, indeed. Standing at the counter waiting to pay, she saw that they had those solid slabs of bread pudding, the indigestible sort that her dad liked so much, a world away from the vanilla and cinnamon-spiced faultless desserts her mother made. She ordered 2 slabs. "I'll just take for those then, love. Jim paid for your tea and sandwich." Bella looked at the woman blankly. "Said he hated to see a damsel in distress. I think he took a fancy to you." She sighed. "Lucky you. I wouldn't mind a ride with him myself." She laughed, and Bella smiled. Bawdy conspirators. For the rest of the journey she found thoughts of her knight in checked shirt returning insistently. She imagined saying yes, she did need a ride, then climbing high up into the lorry cab. He would stand below, watching as her skirt rode up, revealing the backs of her thighs as she clambered in. Sitting next to him in the lorry, high above the road, with the night close in around them, she'd turned to absorb his profile, silhouetted against the star-pricked sky. Breathe in the smell of male skin, fresh sweat, cotton. Here, in the warm bubble of the cab, the vibration of the engine thrumming through the soles of her feet, she feels safe. No need to talk, to spoil the heavy hum with the thin clatter of words. There is just him and her and the road ahead. The thickness of his body next to her seems like some rock or standing stone, solid and unyielding. She wants to feel his hands, his fingers warm on the back of her neck, the shock of his rough chin against her cheek, to be held in